Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby, where we help women be empowered, intentional mothers. This podcast is best enjoyed sipping tea or taking a stroll in nature. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be substituted for professional psychological or medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, midwife, or other qualified health provider with any questions about your personal situation, health, or medical condition. Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby. This is B, and today I have a special guest speaker with me, Mishea, with Rise Optimal Living. Mishea is a chiropractor, and today we are going to talk about the benefits of receiving chiropractic care during pregnancy and post-baby. Hi, Mishea. How are you?
Great. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm so glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Mishea, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your practice?
Absolutely. So I'm a chiropractor here in Colorado Springs. I specialize in pregnancy, post-baby, and I do pediatrics as well. So I've been in practice for almost 10 years now.
Nice.
My first practice was in Buena Vista, Colorado, and I still own that and travel there once a month, but I am full-time Colorado Springs practice.
Yay for us.
Yeah. It's so great to be here full-time.
Yes.
So very grateful. But yeah, I want to give you a little bit of background of why chiropractic and especially why pregnancy and postpartum and babies is because I actually grew up in a chiropractic family.
Okay.
My dad's a chiropractor, and after experiencing my mom's labors and deliveries at home, she had all 7 of us at home. So I got to, and I'm the oldest of 7, yeah.
So you got to see your siblings being born.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
It was an experience that I can't really put to words.
Yeah.
Yeah. So super inspirational for me, and just being a part of that and seeing the difference in my own family's experience with that, and how chiropractic played a role into healthy pregnancies and healthy deliveries and healthy babies. I was like, I want to do that for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. So it
Yeah.
really did inspire you
Absolutely.
in such a big way. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
So, so I decided to go to chiropractic school when I was about 12 years old and never looked back.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I love, I think I was just actually talking to someone the other day, and I'm like, it's one thing to do something just to like make an income. I was originally a software engineer.
Wow.
And I took some aptitude tests. It says you would be a good software engineer. So, okay, I did that. And I made a lot of money, and I didn't have the passion for it though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's something to say about doing something that you're really passionate about, because typically when you have the passion, you're really good at it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Absolutely.
I love
agree
that.
with you.
So can you tell the listeners a little bit about prenatal chiropractic care? Like, what can they expect? What does it look like? Those type of things.
Yeah. So most people, when they think of chiropractic, they think these rough adjustments. But when we're dealing specifically in the prenatal period, our bodies are super sensitive to input, right? We are sensitive to smell, taste, sound, all of the things. So I am consciously aware of that when someone walks in who is currently pregnant. The adjustment is a very gentle approach to the body. And I sometimes joke with my moms because they sometimes fall asleep on the table as a result of that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's like their time to literally unwind and relax. And honestly, getting to them to that state of even falling asleep on the table is just a sign that we're activating the parasympathetic part of their nervous system, which is that healing, resting, growing part of their nervous system.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we are in that fight or flight, especially if it's your first pregnancy and figuring out all these changes in your body.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Not only the changes in your body, but like planning for bringing in this new human into your life and all that goes with it. There's just so much to learn and it's overwhelming. So I can totally see that. So not like your traditional chiropractic care where there are these big like jostling kind of
totally
relax, deep breath.
Yep, exactly.
None of that.
I don't have to say that in my practice to say relax, just relax. Yeah. No, they're already falling asleep. So
I think that is super helpful. A lot of our mamas in yoga are a little bit worried, like, I don't know about chiropractic care when I'm pregnant. Totally. And you know what? I would say that their intuition, their gut instinct on that is right on, because they have some hormones that the rest of us are not running around with, like relaxin, right? And you definitely have to be a little bit more careful with their bodies.
Absolutely.
So that makes sense. Is there, like, as far as a pregnant person goes, is there like, a particular pregnant person that, chiropractic is for? Are there contraindications, like some people should not do chiropractic? How would you know if maybe you should seek out some chiropractic care, or if it's a good option for you?
Absolutely. I actually tell my moms that and all pregnant persons, like, hey, this is for everyone. There is no doubt in my mind that there's not a person that wouldn't benefit from this. So I would say that there's no reason not to start from day one, actually.
For everybody.
For
everybody
everyone
who's pregnant.
Yep, exactly. Even in first trimester, when you hear all the scary things of, don't do this and don't do that, like this is the risky period in pregnancy. But what I find is that when we start to work with unwinding your nervous system, it actually results in a more healthy pregnancy overall.
I love that.
Yeah.
And as you're talking about this, what comes to my mind, we see a lot of mamas in our ultrasound studio who are on an IVF journey, and that IVF journey may have been very long with multiple losses, and I feel like for them they're cautious and a little bit anxious and worried, which is called for because they've really gone through a lot. Would somebody who, has had an IVF journey and maybe had some losses but is now pregnant, would they be able to do chiropractic? Is that safe for them?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, approaching the body in a very gentle way is absolutely the first and foremost thing that I do. Especially when we're dealing with emotional trauma like that, where it's been a super long journey for them. Approaching the body with a sensitivity to that is really important. And so a lot of times, especially in those first couple months of pregnancy, the adjustment looks different than even the second trimester and third trimester. Sometimes we're just doing more energy work just to help them clear out some of these things, these emotional blocks or these physical blocks that have kept their body from conceiving in the first place.
Ooh, so that brings up a whole nother question for me then that I didn't even have in my mind. But then preconception,
yes.
If we're having some conception difficulties, some type of fertility difficulties, then you would also recommend they come and see you or a qualified
Absolutely.
chiropractor in their town.
Absolutely, 100%. And the reason why is because, again, we are trying to access, as chiropractors, the nervous system. And so if there's any hiccup between brain and body back to the brain, then sometimes that, once we clear that, the body is able to be like, oh, I'm free of X, Y, and Z, and now I can have the capacity to carry this pregnancy, for example.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? It's like what you're describing to me, it sounds like I recently did a podcast about trauma, and we were talking about the nervous system.
Absolutely.
And we were talking about the animals, and if an animal had just been, chased and they were suddenly prey for a predator, but they managed to get out of it, they like shake it off. And that was like the physical release of that, that energy. And it almost sounds like you guys are aiding in that, in the physical body, like a physical release of some of that. Is that
absolutely?
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times what we don't realize that we need to shake it off, right? Like we don't know what was traumatic to us. Even at a young age, it could have been trauma from like when you were, 2, 4, 6, 8 years old. We don't know. And so if we can unwind those layers and just, in the animal term, shake it off, right, and get rid of that energy, then as a result of that, it allows the system to be at a capacity to, one, heal, but also take on more stress, which is, pregnancy is stressful, right? Like it is a stress to the body, but at the same time, it's a very good thing. It's a good stress to the body. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That is super cool. So for a pregnant person, and maybe we open it up to all of the things, but we've kind of started off focusing on a pregnant person. But for a pregnant person, what kind of conditions or ailments can chiropractic support or relieve?
Totally. So there's obviously new symptoms that arise with pregnancy as our center of gravity shifts forward, and there's relaxin in the body, and there's hormones that are going and raging. So there's obviously a ton of changes to the body. So I've seen the whole gamut from sciatica to restless leg to difficulty sleeping.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on about all the different kinds of ailments that I've seen. And I can't guarantee that, hey, this is going to be the one place where you can have all these symptoms relieved. But again, when we start to clear the nervous system, as a result of that, a lot of these symptoms start to dissipate.
Would it help in first trimester with morning sickness?
Absolutely.
It does?
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting story about that. I actually just saw a mom today who is early in her pregnancy, and her first pregnancy was it was awful for her. She had hyperemesis gravidarum, which we all know is like everyone's worst nightmare, where you're just, getting sick all of the time. And so she wanted this pregnancy to be different. And so she started seeing me, and so far, she has not thrown up once.
Oh, wow.
And her nausea is kept at bay. And so she has just had a whole different experience with her first trimester thus far, which is really incredible.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So her first pregnancy, she was literally sick, probably, it sounds like vomiting, not just nausea,
Yes,
but
that's
vomiting
correct.
Throughout the entire pregnancy.
Yeah. She said every 6.5 minutes.
Holy cow.
Until she was put on medication to help with that, which was just crazy.
Wow. And did the medication make it go away, or did it just kind of curb it?
It curbed it, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. She had it from day one to the end of her pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so pregnancy number 2, the very beginning of pregnancy, she's seeking out chiropractic support and no vomiting, nausea?
Just very little nausea.
She's
She's like, I just take a little bit of ginger and it's all good.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So for somebody who is really struggling with morning sickness, how often would they see a chiropractor?
Yeah, it really depends on the person, to be honest. Usually if there's like a very specific symptom that someone wants to tackle, I like to see them more often than not. So once a week or so.
Okay.
But typically if a pregnancy is super healthy, I always recommend just doing once every other week. And then once they get into third trimester, it's okay, let's go ahead and make it more intensive so that we can prepare their bodies for the marathon that's coming up.
Yes. I will tell you what, a lot of the mamas that come and see us in prenatal yoga, they will come once the morning sickness subsides for the most part.
Totally.
Occasionally I'll get a mama who, may be at the tail end of it and, comes in kind of salivating, I'm like, ugh. But usually they'll come in after that passes, and then they're feeling really good, lots of energy, second trimester, and then towards the end of second trimester, some of the little aches and pains start to creep up. So, I think some of the ones, obviously sciatic nerve pain is like on the top of the list. That one comes up a lot. Round ligament pains. I've had a lot of people, and I think they're usually second time, third time moms with pubic symphysis, where they're just really uncomfortable in their pelvis, and it's probably from pregnancy 1 is my guess.
Yes.
And then also another very common one that we see in the yoga class is the numb, fuzzy fingers or the pregnancy carpal tunnel. That's super common. It's kind of crazy. It must be because we're like hunched over all the time.
Yeah. So, you can think about like when we think of a proper posture, we think head above shoulders and shoulders above pelvis. But when we are pregnant, our pelvis shifts forward, right? And now our body is having to adapt to this new posture, which then brings all of this tension in different parts of the body. And you can think of where our postural shifts happen. So if it's happening in the pelvis, it's going to happen in the shoulders, it's going to happen in the neck, right? And so then we get all sorts of weird symptoms. Like, for example, we are affecting our brachial plexus, which controls the nerves or that is our nerves to our hands. And if we start to get numbness there, that's saying, hey, we have some carpal tunnel or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes it shows up as headaches or low back pain, pubic pain.
Yeah. And you also, if you look at a pregnant person who, their little baby bump has gotten a little bit bigger, you can also notice most of the time the pelvis is rolling forward, but the heart is starting to curl in. And it seems like the shoulders start to curl in around the heart more and more as we get closer to having the baby. I had one mama say, it's because her boobs are so big. But I think there's a little bit more.
There's totally more to that. Yeah. There's totally more to that. Again, like, in pregnancy, we are so sensitive. We don't even realize how sensitive we are to energy.
Yes.
Right? Like anyone's energy. Someone walks into a room, we may be sensitive to that person walking into the room.
Right.
You think about when you're delivering and like there's a nurse that you feel uncomfortable with or, a person that comes in that you feel uncomfortable with, it can immediately stop labor just like that.
Yes.
And so, anyways, that energy does affect our posture, right? So like that fetal posture that we get into, that closing of the heart is actually a protective mechanism for us to make sure that outside energy doesn't impact us too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think maybe there's a little bit of a mama bear in there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So protecting our sensitive selves, but also protecting our precious cargo that we're carrying
100%.
around on our front side.
100%.
Yeah. If a person, so, we listed a few, of those common things that come up and there's a ton. I mean, the list can go on and on. If somebody is in a place where, oh gosh, I just had a reminder. I had a mama come in one time into yoga and she's like hobbling, like limping. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? She's like, and this is a thing with pregnant people. They are so tough and they always are just like, so, like everything's good because my baby's good. And they're like kind of gimping around a little bit. And you're like, what? No, I'm fine. It's fine. I just, it just hurts to walk right now. And
but baby's good. It's all good.
Exactly. But the baby's okay, so we're good. I'm like, But this doesn't look good for you. Like, you look so uncomfortable. You poor thing. And I think in her case, it was just a really bad case of sciatic nerve pain. So once somebody is in that state, and oftentimes they'll be in that state, and that's like the reason they came to yoga. They're like, I need help.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, yoga can help. But when they're in that state, for yoga to help, it takes a little time. My recommendation typically is like, you need lots of helpers right now, right? You need yoga. Yoga is going to like keep that thing at bay.
Yep.
But I think a chiropractor and probably a really good prenatal massage therapist as well. But once they're in a state like that where it's like pretty bad, is chiropractic helpful? Is it too late to seek chiropractic care? And then what is like, and I know it probably differs by ailment, but what would be the expectation? Like when somebody's in that much, like she clearly is uncomfortable, even though she had a smile on her face, I'm like, oh gosh, how much time would it take for somebody maybe in that situation to get some relief?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've had moms come in with that intensive pain and feel immediate relief. Mm-hmm. There are times where it takes a little bit more because there may be some guarding in the body for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. It could be like a physical trauma they experienced, or it could be an emotional trauma they experienced that is causing just like this hiccup in their system. So it really just depends on their situation. But most times I see at least some improvement right away, like where they're limping into the office and dancing right out of the office.
Yeah, they're like, oh my gosh,
yeah, they're like, thank you.
And then how long would those results last? So, one of my thoughts is I love acupuncture, like a really good acupuncturist. Yes. That's like, for me, that's like my primary care provider. So if I am in pain, and clearly my, nothing is falling out of my body, like my guts are not coming out or anything like that. But if I'm in pain, I'm going to go to the acupuncturist and she puts some needles in, and then she'll say, like move that. And, this area that's in pain, you're like, I don't really want to move it, but you move it and it's gone.
Yep.
And sometimes it fixes it and that's it. But sometimes it only gives me like 3 or 4 days of relief and then I have to go back. How is it for chiropractic?
That's a good question. I know that some people are like, well, once you start going to the chiropractor, you're never going to get like,
right. That's it. You're always going to have to go.
Yeah. And actually for me, it is a team effort. I want to make sure that the person that I'm seeing knows that they're in control of their health. That I'm not like this doctor up here and then they're down here and I'm telling them what to do. It is we're walking side by side through this. And so I want full communication from them on like, hey, I'm actually experiencing some relief or I'm not experiencing some relief. And so with that, I think it's really important in the healing process to have that like sense of like, I have a partner that can walk alongside me through these X, Y, and Z symptoms that I'm experiencing. And like I said before, it could be a short journey, it could be a long journey, but usually people decide to come back to chiropractic care as a regular part of their health care because they know the difference between feeling good and feeling bogged down with life.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So talk to me about a third trimester or like, we're getting, maybe 38 weeks. We're getting close to Labor Day.
Yep.
What can chiropractic care offer then? I mean,
absolutely.
Obviously some aches and pains because that's like the most uncomfortable time for most people, it's the most uncomfortable time for the entire pregnancy. So it can offer some relief for some of that. But is there anything in addition?
Well, first of all, I do want to touch that base that it's never too late to start chiropractic care. I've actually had some moms come in at 38, 39, 40, 41 for different reasons. They're like, hey, I want to jumpstart, labor, or I'm experiencing pain or uncomfortableness. And so it's never too late to just go ahead and start. Most people in third trimester are experiencing just those simple aches and pains. But sometimes the baby just needs a little bit of assistance, and the mom needs a little bit of assistance, because what's going on is there's this communication between mom and baby leading up to Labor Day, right? So there's sometimes there can be hiccups in that communication that's causing this delay. And so as we clear the nervous system, what happens is sometimes it can jumpstart labor for mom.
That is huge.
Yeah.
One of the things I tell our mamas in prenatal yoga, everybody wants to work, like, I'm going to work all the way up until, the very last day I possibly can, or until like I go into labor, because they want all the leave,
Exactly.
Our United States leave policy is kind of crap.
Love it.
So, but one thing I'm usually telling the mamas is, your body needs to receive the signals from your mind that we are ready. And if we are still focusing all of our attention on work, or, finishing up the last details of the nursery or what have you, and we're not really starting to do that slow down process and get those naps in and calm the body and calm the mind, then labor doesn't know that you're ready.
Exactly right.
We have a high instance of induction in the United States, one for other reasons, but one because we're so go, 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 go that the body doesn't get the cue from us that, okay, yeah, we're ready to do this thing. And I have seen, if mamas like slow down a little bit, maybe 2 weeks before the baby arrives, labor will just come. And it sounds like what you do is a little bit of helping with that. Just
absolutely.
If you're work, the nervous system can't calm.
Yeah.
Right? We're still
exactly.
Right?
Holding our breath.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's exactly right. So you can think of the nervous system as having two parts. So there's your parasympathetic and then your sympathetic. And in America, we love to run off of our sympathetics. It is like our fight or flight. We love to go, go, go. Slowing down is not an option. We always have a tiger chasing after us.
Right.
Yeah. Whether that's, our boss or our I could go on.
Right.
But anyways,
the tax man.
Yeah, the tax man, right? So it's a constant, we always have to reset our mind of like, oh, right, it's okay to relax. It's okay to take this break. It's okay to take a nap. It's okay to just sit and breathe, right? And so when someone walks in who is, 38 weeks pregnant and is in that state, I want to make sure that I can affect their parasympathetic nervous system, that healing part of their nervous system, that resting part of the nervous system, as best I can. And as a result of that, that's when we start to see, the body's like recognizing, oh, okay, we're not running from a tiger.
Right.
We are safe to deliver this baby.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, labor just starts right up.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Hannah and I were talking about different places, different locations to give birth on a previous podcast. And one of the things I mentioned was, I noticed, not for all, but for many women who had chose a home birth location, that they would get this kind of like sleepy, glazed look on in their eyes, but it would happen like several weeks before their due date. And so my thought is they've probably entered a space where they're like, yes, I'm done, I'm ready, and I'm just kind of like waiting for the baby to come. And it almost sounds like what you can do is kind of bring that in through chiropractic care. So maybe you didn't have the space to create it on your own. Ideally, you make that space.
Yes.
But you could almost like kickstart that for them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Which is so cool to see. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times that I've had a mom come in at like 40, 41, 42 weeks and is like, hey, like my doctor's threatening to get to get an induction, and I don't want to do that. Like I'm fearful of that. So first we want to talk about the fear of like that, right? And then second, it is addressing, okay, how can we get your body into a state of calm? Yeah. And the adjustment is that first part, but also just like being their coach in a way, like saying like, hey, like, can you do these things at home? I always like to send my clients home with homework because my office is a place that they can start the healing and they can start the changes, but those changes can't have a lasting effect unless they're willing to do the homework that's involved with it.
100%.
Yeah.
It's not a magical pill that lasts until after the baby arrives, right? It's like you can bring them into this calm, relaxed state, and then their job is to remain in a calm, relaxed state and not re-enter that fight or flight place that they were in previously.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. How about little nuggets who lost their way and they are not quite in the right position for their birthday?
That's a great question. So usually that's a result of a couple of different things. Space within the pelvis, that certainly needs to be addressed. So chiropractors who specialize in pregnancy should have a Webster certification.
Yes.
So if you're unaware of that, it is a certain kind of adjustment that helps create space for both mom and baby. A lot of times it is just a result, the baby moves, head up or transverse, because it doesn't have the space to move head down. Mm-hmm. And so if we can address the ligaments, the muscles, and the pelvis, and how it's aligned with baby, then all of a sudden baby's like, oh, I have space, and now I can move, and now I can go into a more ideal space for delivery.
In the case, so we'll get a lot of mamas who maybe baby is still breech.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they are facing the possible external version, and they're like, I really don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
That's scary, and I heard it's painful, and all of those type of things. It sounds like chiropractic care could be helpful, and in that case, how much time? Like how many appointments or how much time do they need to allow themselves to have it be effective? So one of the things is like, I know the OB, once the baby is like 37 weeks gestational age, they're really like, hey, look, we either need to get this baby flipped manually, because we're going to run out of space and it starts to become more dangerous, and so if they were thinking, my baby, maybe I'm like 34, 35 weeks, my baby is still breech. How much time do they, like, what is that window? How much time do they need to give you?
It really depends on the person. It's always hard for me when I see a mom at 38, 39, 40 weeks, and it's like, that gives me very little time to work with the mom and making those changes. But I have seen it, actually. I had a mom come in at, almost go time. She's 39 weeks, and she's like, so my doctor said that I'm going to have an ECV or we're going to have a C-section. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought that I would try you first. And I'm like, well, that puts a lot of pressure on me, but I'll help you as best I can. So I was like, I want to see you once a day for the next 5 days.
Okay.
And so I'm like, I'm going to make this intensive because we're almost go time and your doctor's threatening this. So we want to make sure that we actually make an impact. So, by the third visit, baby had flipped.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
At 39 weeks.
Yeah, at 39 weeks. So
that's
again,
fantastic.
It's like, it's not too late, but at the same time, it's more ideal if you start from day one. Yeah. Of pregnancy. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Or if they didn't start and they're like 35 weeks.
Yeah.
Could you like get it? Like,
100%.
Do some work over a couple weeks and maybe
100%.
I mean,
yeah, because again, like baby's moving. I mean, ideally the baby's head down by, they say, like anywhere between 32 and 37 weeks.
Right.
Yeah. So coming in at 35 weeks is not a problem at all. And we can make some huge changes at that point too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good to know. I think that's like one of the biggest concerns that comes up with, breech babies. It's like, what do I do? Like, I don't want to do this procedure with my doctor. What are my other options? Right.
Absolutely.
So, I love that. Is there any final like preparation for labor? I mean, it sounds like the idea is start seeing your chiropractor early in pregnancy and then just maintain that relationship throughout the entire pregnancy if you can. And it sounds like you adjust, as they go along, and it's a personal program. So based on what they're experiencing and based on where they are in their pregnancy and those type of things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a really beautiful thing if I start with moms early in pregnancy and see them through to labor and delivery. A lot of my moms, minus, I've had one mom whose labor went 24 hours, but outside of that, out of all the moms I've adjusted these past 10 years, a lot of their active labor times have been 10 hours or less.
I love that.
Because their body's prepped and ready. And it's just like, hey, we know what to do.
First-time moms too?
First-time moms too.
Sold. Everybody that's listening is like, okay. And, Hannah and I talk about this a lot. And, I'll always say your body is your most valuable asset. And so the next thing that comes up as a concern for people is the cost.
Yeah.
Some insurance cover it. Some insurance does not cover it.
Yep.
And what I always say, and this is my personal thing because I do live by my body is my most valuable asset. Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like it's a really good investment. Like if you do have the money and maybe your insurance doesn't cover it, it sounds like an investment worthwhile just for what you just said.
Exactly.
2 minutes ago.
Yes.
Which
100%.
Is like, short labor? Yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things because I will speak to the mom after she's had a baby and I was like, so how'd it go? And she's like, well, it was quick and good and I just felt like my body knew what to do, and it's like, wow, it's such a rewarding thing to hear, not because I did that, but because their body was able to heal through whatever it was going through and just be in an ideal state and ready for birth.
Yeah I love that. So Mama comes and she has, a really good relationship with you as she's going through her pregnancy, and then the little nugget is born. Does she keep coming after the baby's born?
100%, yes. The reason why is it's a big event. You can think of... So I'm a runner. I love running ultras. It's one of my passions outside of chiropractic. And I look at pregnancy as this huge ultra that you're preparing for. And so you're training, you're doing things that are helping your baby grow. And so that is all prep leading up to labor and delivery. So you're adding in all these extra things like chiropractic, yoga, acupuncture, eating really well. And then baby comes. And then sometimes I see moms be like, well, you can just adjust my baby, but I don't want to come in because, my baby's my priority now. And it's like, well, you just went through this big event too. And it's really important to be able to recover from that huge ultra you just went through.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of times, and especially in our culture, we really value the birth of the baby and the baby is the main priority.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we forget about the mom, right?
Right.
And the mom forgets about herself too.
Right.
And understandably so. We turn into mama bear, but we need those reminders of hey, I actually am a priority to this as well.
Well, and you have to be.
Yes, 100%.
I think you have to prioritize yourself because we've talked about this before on this podcast, but while baby is in mom, she is the life support system. But for at least the first year outside of mom, she's still the life support system. Yes. You are not physically connected 100% of the time anymore, but your well-being will directly affect their well-being.
Absolutely. I will see a baby with colic, for example, and the colic has sometimes cleared because mom got adjusted and was cleared emotionally from oh my gosh, I need to help my baby. Yes. Right? And so when she became calm, the baby became calm.
Yes.
And there was no longer these stress hormones running through the baby.
That makes so much sense.
And those symptoms dissipated.
That makes so much sense.
I almost am well, I think it's a priority to see you and secondarily baby, but I would love to see both.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How about Is there anything that chiropractic can do or support for the breastfeeding relationship? For me, I feel like when you're breastfeeding, you're in this kind of like leaned over, hunched over state all the time. It is super uncomfortable, right? Mm-hmm. And that has to wear on you. But so there's that. There's the posture, mm-hmm. right? And then I'm wondering, in the relationship, is there things that you can?
Oh, always. Yeah. I like to call it the mama posture because we're leaning over baby all day. We're staring at baby. We're holding baby. We're nursing baby. And all of a sudden we get this like closed off posture, right? And so there's a lot of symptoms that come with that. And so if we can reset the posture, that's actually going to reset the brain and reset our emotions as well, which is really kind of a cool thing to experience and something that's kind of like a side effect of the adjustment per se.
Right.
Yeah. But on the baby side, if I am okay to touch base on that, is what I find is sometimes baby is unable to latch because of this tension through their system. We think of it as a big event for mom, but it's also a big event for baby too. They're experiencing birth as well. And so a lot of times, even if it's like the most beautiful birth in the world, there's still some things that can happen to their nervous system that causes them to be locked up in certain ways. And so it could be favoring one breast over the other, or their jaw is not opening, or there's, ties that we can address too. And so it's really like important to see both mom and baby if there's these difficulties in breastfeeding relationships.
I love that. So post birth, you would see them as a unit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because technically they still are one.
Right.
Yeah.
They really are.
They really, really are. I mean, the baby's brain is learning what's safe, right? And so if the mom was that baby's safe place for so long, they still see the mom as this safe place. And so there's this connection that really can't be explained. And just because that baby has left your body does not mean that connection is broken.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of mom being put into a state of calm and relax, and then baby immediately also following gets put in a state of calm and relax, and then as a unit they get to be calm and relaxed together, rather than one is calm and relaxed and one is maybe still in anxiety or fight or flight. Totally. And then it seems to me that the one who was calm and relaxed, energy will sync with energies. Mm-hmm. So the one that's calm and relaxed has a high probability to sync with the fight or flight energy really quickly. So
Absolutely.
Then it has the probability of not being last very long or not being as effective as it could be if they both don't get some care at the same time.
Exactly right. Yeah. Yep. So that's why it's just so important to not forget about yourself postpartum. Yes. It's so important. I know it's really easy to focus on this new little life, but if you can see this new little life as still part of you, you will see that priority as like, hey, like we need to take care of us together.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned doing adjustments on newborn, and I think for some mamas that might strike a chord of fear if they are thinking about traditional chiropractic care for like an adult person.
Right.
For a newborn, what does that care look like?
That's a great question. And I love that question because most people think of chiropractic again as like these like big manual adjustments. And then when they think of their child, they're like, man, I do not want to put my child in that position, right? But what's really cool about infant adjusting, and one, I should say that you should seek a chiropractor that does specialize in pediatric adjusting and has done their training through the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, the ICPA, because they have gone through all of the extra training, which is usually a 2-year training period on top of schooling that we go through. So it's really important to make sure that you seek out a chiropractor that specializes in that. Secondly, the pediatric adjustment is actually a very gentle adjustment. I like to explain it as I'm putting as much pressure as I would just to put a little dimple on a tomato. Oh. Yeah.
So that's super helpful to understand.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're thinking about a soft tomato, how much pressure would I need to put to make a little dimple on this tomato? And when moms envision that and they see that, they're like, oh, okay, that is a very, very light force.
Right.
And the reason why we don't need these big manual adjustments for babies is because their systems are wide open. They're so sensitive to any kind of input whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And so any kind of stimulus to their nervous system is going to have a great impact. And so that's why we don't need these huge forces to make a great impact.
I love that.
Yeah.
So if a mama had a baby who maybe had a hard start right after birth, maybe they spent some time in the NICU for whatever reason, is there a guideline for when it's safe to bring baby in for chiropractic care? Is there like you should wait some amount of time, or how does that work?
I have seen babies literally hours after birth. So it is never too late or too early to start for babies. Even if they've been in the NICU, there's usually a reason, right? And so like there's some kind of hiccup in their system that brought them there, or it was a very traumatic birth, or for whatever reason. And so I love to just see babies right after they get out of the hospital and they're on their way home. Sometimes I'm the first stop for a mom, like after they get out of the hospital. I just feel so honored to be that like first pit stop that they make, or that first family outing that they make, to get their baby adjusted as well as themselves.
And just kind of give them, get them off on the right foot.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we're talking about neurology and how chiropractic impacts that, in our first year of life, we have 80 to 90% of our brain growth occur.
Yes.
We almost have our full adult brain by 2 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you can think about that growth, and how much more important is it to make sure that baby's nervous system is functioning at its best? Yeah.
Yes. There's a couple of things that come to mind for me. When I was attending home births, there were occasions where babies came in. The clinical term is asynclitic, so they kind of, and the non-clinical term is like cockeyed. Right? They just didn't come the way they were supposed to come. Somehow they kind of navigated funny, and they came in and their heads kind of off to the side a little bit. And it's very interesting because sometimes you might notice for some babies, especially if they come in a little bit funny like that, they will only look to one side, and you might notice that they never look to the opposite side. Which I would say is probably an indication that they would need to see, don't need to, but probably should seek out chiropractic care.
Yeah. You can imagine that. Like, so babies can't communicate like, hey, my neck hurts from that, from the birth. And so they usually just show symptoms, right? So like, hey, I will not move my neck to the left or to the right. Yeah.
And I don't want to breastfeed on one breast, but I will breastfeed on the other breast.
That's exactly right.
Mamas, be careful with this, because I think a lot of mamas were like, oh, there's something wrong with my breast.
Right.
And sometimes there's not. There's just sometimes it's causing the baby discomfort to kind of maneuver their head in that direction for that side.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yep. And if they could communicate, they would let us know. Right. And so those symptoms are just a sign from the body saying, hey, I need a little bit of assistance. I need a little bit of help in removing this tension or this pressure or this pain that I'm feeling.
And those type of things can be fixed rather quickly in chiropractic.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Babies respond literally almost immediately. Yeah. It is because, like I said before, their systems are so open to any kind of stimulus that when I make these changes, they immediately are like, oh, I have no problem breastfeeding on this side, or I can move my head, and they start to turn.
Yes.
And they just show those changes right away, which is so cool to see.
Well, and it's probably such a relief for the mama because, in a case like that baby might have some fussiness. I had a friend who gave birth, and for whatever reason, her baby was fussy for like the first 6 months of his life, and he just fussed all the time. And she went to the doctors multiple times, and they couldn't quite figure out or pinpoint what it was. And eventually they diagnosed him with colic. And so then, she kind of Googled colic and started to get, all of these colicky things like grape water.
Yeah, gripe water.
Yeah. All of these things, and nothing was working. And then finally somebody recommended that she take the baby to a chiropractor. And she said that she went to the chiropractor, the baby got adjusted, and from that moment forward, the baby was a completely different person. Suddenly, he was smiling and cooing and giggling, and all the fussiness went away. Just like that.
Yes.
It's amazing.
It's incredible. I literally see it every day.
Wow.
It's one of my favorite things to see this new life just be like, oh, that's all I needed? Great. And now the baby's just like as happy as can be. And again, that changes the whole family dynamic.
Heck yeah.
Right? Like mom's not worried anymore and dads can relax and like go back, feel comfortable going back to work. Like there's just like these really, it creates a not just like an impact on that infant, but like a global impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is a random question that just popped into my mind, but if we have a baby who is just not sleeping well ever, can chiropractic help with that? Because that's one of the big like, please help me. This baby never sleeps.
Absolutely, yes, yes. I do see that a lot as well. As a matter of fact, I just saw a baby a couple weeks ago who was not sleeping, not taking naps or any. It was just like these parents were just at their wits' end, and they were like, "Here, just take my baby." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll see what we can do." And like, I get a text the next day and was like, my baby had a 6-hour stretch. I had to wake my baby up to go to nurse.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's amazing to be able to just like have this impact on their nervous system where they're just like, oh, I just needed a little bit of help. And then all of a sudden I'm able to sleep. Right. And like, that has a huge,
what a relief.
Yeah. The mom is like, thank you.
Yes.
When can I come back?
Exactly. We'll be back every couple of weeks to make sure this little one is sleeping.
Yes.
I love that. So listeners, there's a lot of help out there for a bunch of these things that come up. Before we wrap it up, I wanted to hit on one more thing. I'm thinking about the second time mom, the third time mom. As a birth worker, second time moms usually give birth very quickly, but third time moms, we call them tricky because their body has had a couple of pregnancies, a couple of births, and it's changed.
Yep.
And they carry a little bit differently. They labor a little bit differently, and you kind of don't know what to expect. I'm wondering we call them multips. So for the multip, is chiropractic care helpful during the pregnancy? Like oftentimes they'll carry really low. There's a lot of pelvis pain because it's second, third baby.
Yeah.
So comfort of pregnancy, ease of labor, any of those things.
Yeah. I mean, chiropractic has had a huge impact on these people who have had multiple pregnancies. I have seen, especially when they have them very close together, it can be very stressful on the body. And so my goal is to remove some of that stress that their system has had, right? Okay. And so if we can get their state or their body into a state of healing from that stress of the multiple babies in a couple of years, it makes a huge impact in how they're, carrying and how their body is responding to the changes during pregnancy and delivery.
Nice.
Yeah.
And same prescription for them would be, come as early as you can.
Absolutely.
And maintain the relationship.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. And it makes a difference too, as far as like how they're, for example, pelvic floor is a big thing right now.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if we can impact that and actually strengthen and connect their brain back to their pelvic floor, it makes a huge difference in how they're going to carry their baby throughout that pregnancy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I always, especially with my moms who have had multiple kids, I love to recommend having a team surrounding them. Even in your first pregnancy, you should have a team.
I agree.
You should be looking at, okay, should I seek out pelvic floor physical therapy, yoga, acupuncture, massage therapy? There's no better time than to have a full team surrounding you and a community supporting you, letting you know, like, hey, you can do this and you can have your birth that you want.
I love that.
Yeah.
Mishea, thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to learn more about what she does, you can find her on riseoptimalliving.com. I will include that link in the show notes. Also, for local listeners or somewhat local listeners, Mishea is offering first visit for free, and all you need to do when you schedule your appointment is mention that you heard her on our podcast, My Body, My Bump, My Baby, to get that special promotion and start your self-care. Thank you so much for all of the information and for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.